It is becoming increasingly clear to me that certainly on the left, as I have said before, the left doesn't talk about certain areas. In my conversation with, and if you've seen it with Kevin Logan, we talked about the fact the left almost has nothing to say when it comes to business. I think that is a huge waste and a huge area where the left could pick up voters. And yet it ignores it. I've talked before about how I think foreign policy is an area where the left is really weak on, and not just foreign policy. I think defense is another area where the left is really weak on. We've just did a video about the Red Sea that after time after time after time after warning and the Houthis committing attacks, trying to take a vessel hostage, the US and the UK were very clear. If you keep this up, there will be consequences. And guess what? There were consequences. It was the very definition of F about and find out. So, and what do people think, should have been the response? Just continue to let the Houthis attack, international shipping in the Red Sea? But we're not going to talk about that today. Maybe another time. But another area, of course, Ukraine. And this is an area where we have had, since the 90s, security agreements with Ukraine that, should they be invaded or attacked, that we would help them out, that we would help them come to their defense. And today, Rishi Sunak has gone and sort of reconfirmed that the UK will continue to support Ukraine with signing of new agreements, of certainly new security agreements with Ukraine. And again, I'd like to stress, just a few days ago, it came out that Donald Trump has said, if Europe was attacked, we ain't coming to your defense. NATO is dead. Now, that was, again, because he was in charge, and there is a very good, possibility he could be, once again, back in charge in America. So the left should really, really, really be thinking not only about foreign policy, but of course, defense policy as well. So we're going to have a look at these agreements that where Rishi Sunak was in Ukraine, what he has signed, what is exactly Ukraine will be getting, and of course how vital some of these supplies and military supplies will be certainly this year. So, as always, before we do go into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a off-station link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. So let's go on over to this with Sky News reporting about this today. Rishi Sunak visits Kiev as UK signs security agreements with Ukraine. So Rishi Sunak is currently on a surprise visit to Kiev today as he announces a new package of military aid, security assistances, and humanitarian support. The Prime Minister will sign a UK-Ukraine agreement on security cooperation with President Volodymyr Zelensky, committing the UK to providing intelligence sharing, cybersecurity, medical and military training, and defense industrial cooperation. The UK will also provide a 2.5 billion in aid to the Ukrainian military in 2024 to 2025, an increase of over 200 million on the previous 2 years. Why is it such an increase? Well, as we've said before, you've had two problems here. Not only is the US aid currently being held up by the Republicans, but you have European aid, the EU aid package, which was held up by Hungary. Now, each individual country can still provide their own military aid. And this is what I think you would hope David Cameron and certainly David Lammy are looking at, trying to make sure that the aid and military aid does continue. Because something else I found out recently, Um, the pay of Ukrainian civil servants, something again vital for their society to function, their pay currently is being paid by the Netherlands. So the Netherlands, as said during this war, we will help pay some of your civil servants' pay so that they can get paid, so that your economy can still function and your government can still run. So stuff like that is really, really vital for Ukraine during this time. So as much as, again, we should be providing them military support, again, we're providing cybersecurity support, the defense support, medical training as well, really vital to Ukraine there as well. There are other areas that you can provide, which are, again, of course, non-lethal in the cases we said with the Netherlands. But ultimately, what they do need is military aid. Remember, they are being invaded here. But let's continue. So about 2 million of this will also be spent on a push to procure and produce thousands of military drones. It will be the largest delivery of drones to Ukraine from any nation, according to Downing Street. The most are expected to be manufactured in the UK. The package will also provide the country with long-range missiles, air defense, artillery ammunition, and maritime security. Again, something Ukraine really needs. We've seen the long-range missile strikes that they've done prove to be very, very effective for them. Air defense, another issue. Very recently, we've seen Russians mount a massive barrage that happened. Although you saw it happen and then it disappeared very quickly. Not to say, of course, these attacks still aren't happening, but air defense ultimately does help protect Ukrainian cities, which we'd like to stress this is what the Russians are targeting. And of course, artillery ammunition, probably one of the biggest areas that Ukraine needs at this moment. So being able to step up artillery ammunition production here in the UK, as well as other European countries, is going to be incredibly vital. And of course, maritime security. We've seen a country with effectively no navy manage to take out it's like 25% of the Black Sea fleet. And the more that fleet they take out, the more they can do grain shipments, which again will help Ukraine economically, will also help, feed millions of people as well around the world. So that will be, of course, very good for them as well. So the Ukrainian president has, of course, said that his forces particularly need the air defense systems to fend off Russian aerial barrages. More than 500 drones and missiles were fired between the 29th of December and the 2nd of January, according to officials in Kiev. On Kyiv. The agreement comes as the Ukrainian president presses allies back in the West to provide the country with more support to fight back against Vladimir Putin's forces amid the fierce interests in the war is flagging as the conflict drags on. The crisis in the Middle East has also turned global attention away from the conflict as Israel continues to bombard Gaza. The US and Britain have launched strikes against military targets linked to Houthi rebels also in Yemen. Mr. Sunak also stressed that the UK's continued backing for Kyiv ahead of his meeting with President Zelensky. He said, for 2 years, Ukraine has fought with great courage to repel a brutal Russian invasion. They are still fighting, unfaltering in their determination to defend their country and to defend the principles of freedom and democracy. The UK will also not falter. We stand with Ukraine in their darkest hours. So that Churchill language there, Rishi. Again, called for, but again. We stand with Ukraine in their darkest hours and also in better times to come. The UK is one of Ukraine's closest partners, and because we recognize their security is our security. Today, we are going to go further in increasing our military aid, delivering thousands of cutting-edge drones, striking a historic new security agreement to provide Ukraine with the assurances it needs for the long term. And that is what some of this is really about. Long-term funding, so that they can have and plan for assault defenses. If this is going to, if funding is going to go from 2024 to 2025, that is fine. That is the type of stuff that we should be absolutely doing and providing them. Of course, some of that funding will support organizations like the UN and Red Cross to provide humanitarian aid on the front line, and 80 million will help fortify Ukraine's energy infrastructure from further Russian attacks. Finding the resources will also be provided for English language training in the country. Mr. Sunak, of course, made his first visit to Ukraine in November 2022, weeks after entering number 10. UK has been along the most vocal backers for the Ukraine, etc. We know. Here we are. Shadow Defense Secretary John Healey gave Labour's backing for this vital military funding, writing on X or Twitter, saying that the UK is still united in its support for Ukraine against Russian aggression. So again, the more we support, Ukraine, as we've said before, the better it is for them. The more funding they have, especially long-term funding, because you can't just say, well, here's about a year's worth of funding, then we'll see what happens. The fact that we have committed to a long-term funding package is pretty good. And of course, also will provide a lot of jobs in the manufacturing industry here in the UK. Let's not deny that is also something that will be good for the UK economy. Like I say, even if you are building weapons, someone somewhere is going to benefit. But ultimately, of course, the final benefit will be, of course, to Ukraine, because they will be able to push out and repel, of course, the Russian invaders, or at least have a far stronger hand when it comes to time to negotiate. So again, this is something that I am all for. This is the type of stuff that, again, we should be doing. We've signed security agreements with Ukraine in the past in order to help defend them from any aggression. And as far as I'm concerned, this is just sort of, Sunak and our government continuing to sort of reaffirm that. And I'm also really glad that, again, Labour is also backing that as well. Because I'll tell you now, the last Labour leader would not have, shall we say, been as that forthcoming about backing Ukraine, as he had made very, very clear on multiple times. Which I've said I really, really disagree with him on that. And I would love one day to have a conversation with Jeremy Corbyn about Ukraine and how we should be supporting them and what exactly we should do. And what do you mean when you mean peace? How do you achieve these types of things? Lots of questions. As I've said, I'd love to have a conversation with. I have asked, of course, Stop the War Coalition, but they appear to be far too interested in, campaigning about what's going on in Israel, Palestine. And I said, that's fine. They are, that's fine for them to do. But at one point, all you guys would talk about was about, Ukraine and how we needed to achieve peace in Ukraine. And now you seem to have, well, largely forgotten about that. So, there you go. So, of course, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.